The merchant vessel Endless Horizon drifted through the Keltar Nebula with the grace of a dying star. Its hull bore the scars of a dozen skirmishes, each dent and burn mark a testament to the dangerous routes it traveled. Inside the cramped cargo bay, Jiwoo sat cross-legged on a supply crate, her small frame barely casting a shadow in the dim emergency lighting. She was human, a rarity in this sector of space. At first glance, she appeared no more threatening than a child playing dress-up in an oversized flight suit. Her round face held an almost perpetual expression of wonder, dark eyes wide as she watched the alien crew members hurry past. The sleeves of her maintenance uniform had been rolled up several times, and still they threatened to swallow her hands. When she smiled, which was often, dimples appeared on her cheeks. Captain Vorath, a towering Quellan with scales that shimmered like oil on water, had hired her 3 cycles ago at a backwater station. She had been sitting in the corner of a dingy bar, nursing a drink that cost more than her boots were worth. Her credentials were impeccable, her references solid, and most importantly, she worked for a fraction of what other engineers demanded. Now, as the ship shuddered from yet another systems failure, Vorath was beginning to understand why she came so cheap. Humans, he had learned, were considered a joke among the civilized species. Weak, fragile, slow to heal, and cursed with a lifespan barely long enough to master a single trade. They had only recently stumbled into interstellar travel, their clumsy vessels held together more by hope than engineering. Jiwoo seemed to embody every stereotype. She moved through the ship with an almost clumsy grace, bumping into corners, apologizing profusely in her soft voice. She ate rations that would make a Thraxian garbage worm gag without complaint. When the Quellan security chief, Morvek, had made a crude joke about human fragility, she had simply laughed along with the rest of the crew. The navigation officer, a mantis-like shrill named Tic Tac, watched her now with compound eyes that betrayed mild disgust. Humans, with their soft skin and bizarre internal skeleton, made his kind uncomfortable. They looked like they would pop if you poked them too hard, yet Vorath kept her on. Despite her appearance, Jiwoo had a gift with the aging ship's systems. She could coax the failing engines to life with a touch, reroute power with an intuition that bordered on prescient. She worked longer hours than anyone else, never complained, and asked for nothing beyond her minimal wage and a quiet corner to sleep. As the ship approached the Valor Junction, a notorious crossroads where pirates and smugglers outnumbered legitimate traders 3-1, Vorath found himself studying the small human. She was humming something, a melody from her homeworld, while her fingers danced across a maintenance panel. She looked up, caught his gaze, and smiled that innocent smile. He wondered, not for the first time, what had driven her so far from Earth. Humans rarely traveled alone, preferring the safety of their colony ships and protected trade routes. But when he had asked, Jiwoo had simply shrugged and said she wanted to see the galaxy. As if it were that simple. As if the universe were not a vast killing field where the weak were consumed and the strong barely survived. The proximity alarms began to wail. Vorath's blood ran cold as the sensor display lit up with contacts. 7 ships moving in formation, cutting off their escape route. Pirates. Specifically Corvan raiders, known for their brutality and their practice of selling crew members to the slave markets on Dralix Prime. Tic Tac's mandibles clacked together in distress. Morvek reached for his weapon, though they all knew it was futile. The Endless Horizon was a merchant vessel, armed with only basic defensive systems. Against 7 Corvan raiders, they might as well throw rocks. Jiwoo looked up from her panel, her expression curious rather than afraid. "Pirates?" she asked, her voice carrying that same innocent lilt. Vorath nodded grimly. "Corvans. Everyone to defensive positions. Prepare to be boarded." The small human tilted her head considering this. Then she stood, brushing dust from her oversized uniform. "With your permission, Captain, I should probably head to the armory." The bridge fell silent. Even the alarm seemed to quiet in disbelief. Morvek laughed, a harsh barking sound. "The human wants to fight? You'll be crushed before you fire a shot, little one." Jiwoo's smile never wavered, but something flickered in her dark eyes, something that made Vorath's scales prickle with sudden unease. It was there and gone in an instant, like a predator glimpsed through tall grass. "I appreciate the concern," she said politely, "but I really should get ready." Before anyone could respond, the ship rocked violently. The Corvins had opened fire. The boarding clamps hit the hull with a metallic shriek that echoed through every corridor. Jiwoo moved through the chaos with purpose. Her earlier clumsiness vanished like morning fog. The crew scrambled to their stations, weapons clutched in trembling appendages while she walked calmly toward the armory. Hyun-soo, the quartermaster, a stocky Drellian with 4 arms, watched her approach. He had always liked the little human. She reminded him of his niece, small and cheerful, always asking questions about his homeworld. Now she stood before him, still smiling that gentle smile, and he felt an inexplicable urge to protect her. "You should hide," he said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard speech. "Find a cargo pod. Seal yourself in. Corvins take prisoners, but they prefer their slaves intact." Jiwoo patted one of his lower arms affectionately. "That's very kind of you, Hyun-soo. But I need you to open the armory for me. All of it. The weapons you sell at port and the ones you keep in the back." His eyes widened. The quartermaster's secret cache. How did she know about that? The ship shuddered again. Through the walls they could hear the screech of cutting torches. The pirates would be through in minutes. "Please," Jiwoo said, and her voice was still soft, still polite. But there was something underneath it now. Something that made Hyun-soo's survival instincts scream. "I don't have much time." His upper arms moved before his brain could object, punching in the override codes. The armory doors hissed open, revealing racks of weapons in various states of legality. Plasma rifles, railguns, shock batons, and in the back, the truly dangerous items. Thermal charges, molecular blades. A pulse cannon that was definitely not approved for civilian vessels. Jiwoo surveyed the arsenal with the critical eye of a chef examining ingredients. She selected items with practiced efficiency. A carbine rifle that was almost as long as she was tall, 2 sidearms, a bandolier of various grenades, the molecular blade which she strapped to her thigh, and finally from the very back she pulled out something that made Hyun-soo's blood run cold, a human weapon, old Earth military issue, the kind that had been banned in most sectors after humans had earned their reputation in the frontier wars. She checked it with the familiarity of long practice, her small fingers moving over the device with absolute confidence. Then she looked up at Hyun-soo, and for the first time since he had met her, he saw her without the mask of innocence. Her eyes were hard, ancient, the eyes of someone who had seen horrors and walked through them without flinching. "Lock yourself in the cargo hold," she said. It was not a suggestion. "No matter what you hear, don't come out until I tell you it's safe." The cutting torch broke through. Voices echoed in the corridor, speaking in the harsh guttural language of the Corvin clans. Heavy footsteps approached. Jiwoo turned toward the sound and Hyun-soo noticed something that made his 4 hearts skip in unison. She was still smiling. That same innocent, dimpled smile, but now it looked wrong, like a predator baring its teeth. The first Corvin raider burst through the doorway, all 3 meters of scarred muscle and battle armor. He saw the small human standing in the corridor, dwarfed by the weapon in her arms, and he laughed. It was the last sound he ever made. Jiwoo moved. There was no hesitation, no fear, no wasted motion. The carbine sang once, a sharp report that made the Corvin's laughter turn to a gurgle. He dropped, purple blood pooling beneath him. The corridor erupted in chaos. More raiders poured through the breach, roaring challenges and firing wildly. But the small human was no longer where they aimed. She moved like water, like smoke, like something that should not exist in a universe governed by physics. The oversized flight suit should have tangled her legs. Instead, it seemed to flow with her, as if it too understood that everything before had been a performance. Hyun-soo, frozen in the doorway of the armory, watched something that would haunt his dreams. The innocent engineer, the clumsy girl who had apologized for bumping into walls, had become death incarnate. Every movement was precise. Every shot found its mark. The raiders, veteran killers who had terrorized this sector for decades, fell like wheat before a scythe. One of them, smarter than the rest, tried to retreat. He had seen enough. Whatever this small creature was, it was not prey. It was the predator they had mistaken for a meal. Jiwoo let him run, just for a moment, just long enough for hope to bloom in his chest. Then she raised the old earth weapon, the one whose name Hyun-soo did not know but would later learn to fear, and fired. The raider vanished in a flash of light so bright it left after images. When Hyun-soo could see again, there was only a scorch mark on the wall where the Corvin had been. The corridor fell silent except for the crackle of small fires and the hum of failing life support, where stray shots had found critical systems. Jiwoo stood amid the carnage, not even breathing hard. She checked her weapons methodically, reloaded, and then looked back at Hyun-soo. The innocent smile returned, settling onto her face like a comfortable mask. "You should really get to the cargo hold," she said gently. "There are 6 more ships out there, and I need to discourage them from trying this again." She walked toward the breach in the hull, toward the boarding tubes where more raiders would be waiting, and Hyun-soo understood something fundamental about humans that the rest of the galaxy had somehow missed. They did not look dangerous because they had learned not to. In a universe full of creatures who advertised their threat with claws and scales and poison, humans had evolved something far more terrifying. They had evolved the ability to hide. Captain Vorath crouched behind the navigation console, listening to the sounds of battle echoing through his ship. The Corvins had breached in 2 locations, splitting their forces to maximize chaos. Standard raider tactics. On the bridge, Tic Tac had locked down all systems, making it impossible for the pirates to take control. It would buy them minutes at best. Morvek, the security chief, held his position at the primary entrance, his weapon trained on the sealed door. 2 other crew members huddled behind him, armed with whatever they could grab. Against 20 Corvin raiders, they might account for 2, maybe 3 kills before being overwhelmed. The door began to glow red, cutting through. 40 seconds, maybe less. Then, impossibly, the sounds from the corridor changed. The triumphant roars of the raiders shifted to confusion, then to alarm. Weapons fire erupted, sharp and precise. Someone was screaming. The translator struggled with the words, but Vorath understood the tone. Terror. Morvek's eyes widened. "What in the void?" The cutting stopped. The glowing metal began to cool. On the other side of the door, something was happening. Something that made professional killers forget their objective. Vorath activated the external sensors, routing them to the main display. What he saw made his scales stand on end. The corridor was a tomb. 6 Corvin raiders lay motionless, their armor cracked open like eggs. And moving among them, small and graceful as a dancer, was Jiwoo. She moved to the door, and Vorath could see her face on the camera feed. She was smiling. That same innocent, friendly smile she gave when serving drinks in the mess hall. She knocked on the door. Politely, 3 gentle taps. "Captain?" Her voice came through the intercom, bright and cheerful. "It's safe to open up. I've secured this section." Tic Tac's mandibles clacked in disbelief. "That's impossible." There were 6 raiders, 6, armed and armored. Morvek looked at his weapon, then at the door, then at the captain. "She's human," he said slowly, as if explaining something to himself. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this, but Vorath was beginning to suspect that everyone knew wrong. He had served in the merchant fleet for 30 cycles, had traveled to 100 worlds, had learned to read the signs that separated truth from legend. And right now, every instinct he possessed was screaming one message. They had not hired an engineer. They had hired a soldier, and not just any soldier. "Open it," he commanded. The door slid aside. Jiwoo stood in the corridor. Her flight suit splattered with purple and green blood from a dozen different species. The carbine was slung over her shoulder now, but she had drawn the molecular blade. It hummed softly, its edge invisible in the flickering light. She stepped onto the bridge, and the crew instinctively moved back. All except Vorath, who had not survived 3 decades in space by being slow to adapt. "Report," he said, keeping his voice steady. Jiwoo's expression turned serious, though the smile never quite left her eyes. 7 ships. 28 raiders total. I've eliminated 14. The rest are regrouping on their lead vessel. They're trying to figure out what happened." She paused, tilting her head. "I think I upset them." Morvek made a sound like a dying engine. 14. You killed 14 Corvin raiders. By yourself. Well, I haven't finished yet, Jiwoo said reasonably. I came to ask the captain's permission before I go over there. She gestured with the blade toward the boarding tube that connected them to the pirate vessel. It would be rude to use their own ship against them without checking first. Vorath's mind raced. The gentle engineer who had repaired their engines with such care and precision. The clumsy girl who apologized for taking up space. She had been a fiction, a role. And underneath was this, a warrior who spoke of slaughtering raiders with the same polite tone she used to request extra rations. You want to board their ship, he said flatly. Yes, sir. They have a tractor beam lock on us, and even if they release it, they'll just attack the next merchant vessel that passes through. Standard pirate behavior. She examined the blade casually. I'd prefer to resolve this permanently, but it's your ship, so it's your decision. Tic-Tac found his voice. How? How is this possible? You're human. You're fragile. You're weak. Your species is barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Jiwoo's laugh was soft and genuine. Oh, I know what everyone thinks. It's actually really useful. No one expects much from humans, so we don't have to try very hard to meet expectations. Her expression grew distant for a moment. My homeworld has a saying. The best weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming. We've been refining that philosophy for about 10,000 years. She looked at Vorath, and he saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Not cruelty, not madness, just a calm, professional assessment of threat and response, the eyes of someone who had made killing into an art form. Captain, humanity didn't stumble into space travel. We clawed our way here over centuries of war. Every nation on Earth, every tribe, every group of humans that ever existed has fought for survival against other humans. We're not weak. We're just very, very good at looking weak. She smiled again. It makes the fighting part easier. Vorath thought about the reputation humans had earned in the frontier wars, the stories he had dismissed as exaggeration. Entire battle fleets disabled by small teams, sieges broken by individual soldiers, tactics that seemed to border on prescience. He had assumed the stories were propaganda. Now he wondered if they had been warnings. Permission granted, he said. End this. Jiwoo bowed slightly, a gesture from her homeworld. Thank you, Captain. I'll try to keep their ship intact. The salvage rights should help cover repairs to the endless horizon. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. When she looked back, the innocent mask was fully in place again. Oh, and Captain? After this, I'd appreciate it if we could renegotiate my contract. I think I've been undercharging for my services. Then she was gone, moving toward the boarding tube with a spring in her step, humming that same melody from Earth. Behind her, the crew of the endless horizon stared at each other, each wondering the same thing. What else had they not noticed? And more importantly, how many other humans in the galaxy were hiding the same terrible truth behind innocent smiles? The Corvin flagship Blood Price was a nightmare made metal. 30 years of piracy had decorated its hull with the emblems of destroyed ships, each one a trophy taken from crews now dead or sold into slavery. Inside, the corridors were designed to intimidate, lined with weapons and the preserved remains of those who had resisted too effectively. Commander Thrask, leader of the raiding party, paced the main hold like a caged predator. He was old for a Corvin, his scales marked with scars from 100 battles. He had survived this long by being smart, by knowing when to press an attack and when to retreat. Right now, every instinct told him to cut the boarding tubes and run. Explain to me, he growled at the communications officer, how 28 warriors are reduced to 14 by a single creature. A small creature, a human. The officer, a younger Corvin named Velk, kept his eyes down. The boarding team's report. Resistance beyond parameters. The human fights they say like a Draxian war monk, but smaller, faster. Humans don't fight like war monks. They don't fight at all. They surrender or they hide. Thrask slammed a fist against the bulkhead. What are our options? We could release the tractor beam. Let the merchant vessel go. Thrask considered this. His reputation was built on never releasing prey once caught. If word spread that a single human had driven off his entire crew, he would become a laughingstock. Worse, other prey might resist, thinking they had a chance. No. Send everyone, all remaining raiders. Overwhelm the vessel. If this human is so dangerous, we'll simply... The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in a moment later, bathing the corridors in red emergency lighting. Alarms shrieked. On the displays, system after system reported critical failures. Life support, weapons, navigation, all going offline in sequence. Report. Thrask roared. Velk's claws danced over the console. Someone's in our systems. They've accessed the main computer core. Commander, they're shutting us down from the inside. The inside? How did they... Thrask stopped. Understanding hit him like a physical blow. The boarding tubes. They connected the two ships, which meant traffic could flow both ways. The human hadn't been defending. She had been waiting for them to provide her with an entrance. All raiders to defensive positions. Seal the command deck! And someone find that... The hatch to the command deck exploded inward. Not from weapons fire, from shaped charges placed with surgical precision on the locking mechanism. Jiwoo stepped through the smoking opening and Thrask got his first good look at the creature that had decimated his crew. She was tiny, barely came up to his chest. The flight suit that had been comically oversized now looked like camouflage, stained with blood and scored with burns. She carried that massive carbine as if it weighed nothing, and in her other hand was something he didn't recognize, a human weapon, old and dangerous looking. But what struck him most was her expression. She was smiling. Not the vicious grin of a warrior in battle frenzy. Not the cold satisfaction of a killer at work. Just a friendly, almost apologetic smile, like she felt bad about the inconvenience. "Commander Thrask," she said, her translator rendering her words in perfect Corvan dialect. "I'd like to discuss terms of surrender." The command deck fell silent. The 10 raiders stationed there looked at their commander, then at the small human, then back again. The absurdity of the situation was almost funny. One human offering to accept surrender from a dozen Corvans. Thrask laughed. It came out harsh, more fear than humor. "You're joking." "Not really." Jiwoo stepped fully into the room and the raiders instinctively gave ground. "Your ship is disabled. Your crew is scattered. I've already uploaded your entire operational database to my vessel, which means we now know where you've hidden your treasure, where you refuel, and where you sell your captives." She tilted her head. "Actually, Captain Vorith is already forwarding that information to the Stellar Consortium. There's probably a bounty. Several bounties, actually." Velk checked his console, his expression growing more horrified by the second. "Commander, she's telling the truth. Our entire database has been copied. Every file. Every coordinate. Every contact." Jiwoo nodded encouragingly. "So you see, the fighting is really over. You just haven't accepted it yet. I'd prefer if we could skip the part where I have to hurt anyone else. I've already caused enough trouble today." Thrask felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine fear. This creature, this small soft thing that should have been easy prey, had infiltrated his ship, disabled its systems, and now stood before him speaking of mercy like she held all the power. The worst part was that she did. "What are your terms?" he asked, hating how his voice shook. "Simple. You and your crew surrender. We take your weapons, seal you in the cargo holds, and turn you over to the nearest consortium station. You'll face trial, probably spend a few decades in detention, but you'll be alive. Your alternative is that I finish what I started, and believe me, Commander, you don't want that." One of the younger raiders, brave or foolish, raised his weapon. "One human." "She's one small—" The shot from Jiwoo's carbine took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped, screaming. She had deliberately missed every vital point, but the pain was enough to make her point. "I'm trying to be nice," she said, and her voice carried genuine regret. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Thrask looked at his remaining crew, saw the fear in their eyes. They had realized what he had. This was not a battle they could win. The human had shown them mercy by offering surrender, and Corvans, for all their reputation as brutal killers, understood survival above all else. "We surrender," he said, and felt something inside him die. "On your terms." Jiwoo's smile brightened. "Thank you, Commander. That makes things so much easier. Now, if everyone could please put their weapons on the floor and move to the far wall, we can get this sorted out quickly. Oh, and someone should probably help your friend with his shoulder. That looks painful." As the raiders complied, moving with the sluggish confusion of predators suddenly realizing they were prey, Velk found his voice. "How? How did one human do this?" Jiwoo considered the question while keeping her weapons trained on the Corvans. "Humans are social creatures. We fight in groups. We protect each other. It's our greatest strength." She paused. "But we also train individuals to fight alone, in case the group fails. We call them special operators. Elite warriors, people who can accomplish missions that would require entire armies from other species." She gestured at herself with the carbine, careful not to point it away from the raiders. "I used to be one of those. Then I got tired of fighting and decided to see the galaxy. Turns out, being an engineer is a lot more peaceful than being a soldier. Less paperwork, too." "You came out here alone?" Thrask asked, unable to hide his disbelief. "Away from your kind?" "Sometimes you need a change of scenery. And honestly, it's nice being underestimated. Back on Earth, everyone expects you to be capable of violence. Out here, I can just be Jiwoo, the friendly engineer. At least until someone attacks my ship." The smile turned slightly sad. I really did like just being an engineer. Vorath's voice crackled over the communicator. Jiwoo, status? She activated her own comm. All secure, Captain. The Corvins have surrendered. I'm locking them down now. We'll need to contact the consortium and arrange pickup. A long pause, then acknowledged. Well done. Jiwoo began the process of restraining the raiders, moving efficiently through the command deck. The Corvins watched her, this tiny creature who had shattered their reality, and each one thought the same thing. How many more humans like her were scattered through the galaxy, hiding behind innocent smiles and humble occupations? How many times had pirates, slavers, and warlords picked what they thought was easy prey, only to discover they had chosen a predator in disguise? And in the larger galaxy, as news of this incident began to spread through the communication networks, a new understanding started to form. Humans, it turned out, were not the weak newcomers everyone had assumed. They were something far more dangerous. They were patient. The consortium station Meridian Gate hung in space like a jewel, its 6 rotating rings home to 100,000 beings from across the galaxy. In Docking Bay 7, the Endless Horizon sat surrounded by security vessels, their weapons trained on the captured Corvin flagship tethered beside it. Jiwoo sat in the station commander's office, still wearing her stained flight suit, looking uncomfortable in the expensive chair designed for beings 3 times her size. Commander Yalta, a Quellan administrator with scales that had gone gray with age, studied her with the expression of someone trying to solve an equation that refused to balance. Let me make sure I understand, Yalta said, tapping through the report on his datapad. You, a single human engineer, disabled 7 pirate vessels, eliminated or captured 28 Corvin raiders, and secured enough evidence to dismantle 3 major criminal networks operating in this sector. Yes, sir, Jiwoo said politely, though technically I only disabled 1 ship completely. The others fled once they realized what was happening. Once they realized one of their number had been captured by a human. Yalta set down the datapad. A human. The species that most of the galaxy considers barely capable of basic self-defense. Jiwoo shifted in her seat, looking genuinely uncomfortable now. I understand this is unusual. I'm sorry if it's caused any problems with your reports. Yalta stared at her. The apology seemed sincere. This warrior who had single-handedly accomplished what would have required a consortium military strike team was apologizing. For the paperwork, the bounty on Commander. Thrask alone is 200,000 credits, he said. The information you provided will lead to dozens of arrests. You've effectively cleared the Valar Junction of its most dangerous criminal element. He leaned forward. Miss Jiwoo, the consortium security forces would very much like to know if there are more humans like you. The smile that crossed Jiwoo's face was not innocent. It was knowing, almost amused. Commander, there are 8 billion humans on Earth, another 2 billion scattered across colony worlds. Do you really think I'm unique? The implications of that statement hung in the air like smoke. Yalta felt his scales prickle. 10 billion humans. If even a tiny fraction had skills like this woman, if even 1% could fight with this level of expertise. How many? He asked quietly. How many what? How many humans are like you? Warriors hiding as civilians? Jiwoo considered this. On Earth, we have mandatory military service in most nations. Everyone learns to fight. Some of us just learn better than others. As for hiding, she shrugged, humans don't really think of it as hiding. We think of it as being polite. Why advertise what you're capable of if it makes people uncomfortable? Being polite. Yalta repeated the words like they were a foreign language. In most species, strength was displayed, advertised, used to establish hierarchy and dominance. The idea of deliberately concealing one's capabilities was almost incomprehensible. Commander, if I may. Jiwoo leaned forward, her expression earnest. Humans evolved on a world where almost everything was trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, each other. We survived by being adaptable, by learning, by working together. And yes, by sometimes pretending we weren't threats until the moment we needed to be. She gestured at herself. I look harmless because it's useful to look harmless. People underestimate me. They get careless. And if violence becomes necessary, I have the advantage. Her smile returned. It's not deception, Commander. It's just tactics. A commotion outside the office interrupted them. Captain Vorath entered, followed by the crew of the Endless Horizon. They looked different now, The casual contempt they had shown toward their human engineer had been replaced with something between respect and fear. Yun-Su spoke first, his forearms gesturing nervously. "Commander Yalta, we wish to submit a formal statement regarding Jiwoo's actions. She saved our ship and our lives. Without her, we would all be dead or worse." Vorath nodded, his scales showing the colors of deep respect. "The crew has voted unanimously. We wish to offer Jiwoo a full share in the Endless Horizon, along with a position as second officer. Her technical skills as an engineer are matched by her strategic abilities." Jiwoo looked genuinely surprised. "Captain, I appreciate the offer, but I'm fine with my current arrangement. I just wanted to help." "Just wanted to help," Morvek repeated, shaking his head. "You dismantled a pirate fleet alone. Well, they attacked first. I was just defending the ship." Tic-Tac's mandibles clacked in what might have been laughter or disbelief. "Defending?" "She calls it defending, Commander Yalta. I have served on merchant vessels for 30 cycles. I have seen many battles. What this human did was not defense. It was—" he searched for the word, "artistry." Yalta watched the exchange with growing fascination. The crew clearly held their human colleague in awe now, but Jiwoo seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. She fidgeted with her sleeve, that same nervous gesture he had seen in the security footage when she first boarded the station. "Miss Jiwoo," he said carefully, "I have one more question. When you left Earth, did anyone try to stop you? Did your government have concerns about you traveling alone?" She laughed, and it was the first fully genuine laugh he had heard from her. "Commander, Earth's government was happy to see me go. Most veterans are. We get restless during peacetime. Humans need purpose, and when there are no wars to fight, we find other things to do. Some become engineers, some become traders, some join exploration crews." She paused. "And some of us just want to see if the rest of the galaxy is as interesting as we hoped." "And is it?" Yalta asked. "It's getting there." Jiwoo stood, brushing off her flight suit. "If we're done here, Captain Vorath and I should discuss the salvage rights for the blood price, and I really need a shower. I've been wearing this suit for 18 hours. Yalta waved them toward the door, but as they left, he called out, "Miss Jiwoo, one last thing. How many other humans are currently in this sector? Operating as you do, hiding in plain sight?" She stopped at the doorway, looked back, and that innocent smile appeared again. But now Yalta could see it for what it was. A mask. A comfortable, familiar mask that she wore to make others feel safe. "I honestly don't know, Commander. We don't exactly have a registry. But if I had to guess," she thought for a moment, "probably dozens. Maybe hundreds. Humans like to travel, and we're very good at fitting in." She tilted her head. "Why, does it matter?" "It might," Yalta said slowly. "The galaxy operates on certain assumptions. Power structures, military hierarchies. If humans can produce warriors of your caliber without anyone noticing, then maybe those assumptions need updating." Jiwoo finished for him. "Commander, humans don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to explore, trade, and occasionally defend ourselves when necessary. The fact that we're good at the defending part shouldn't change anything." She left then, following Vorath and the crew down the corridor. Yalta watched them go, then pulled up the consortium's intelligence database on humanity. The file was surprisingly thin, minimal military data, economic projections that painted them as minor players in galactic trade, cultural notes that described them as friendly but fragile. He began typing a new report, flagging it for immediate distribution to consortium intelligence. Subject: reassessment of human capabilities. The report detailed everything he had witnessed. The videos from the Endless Horizon showing Jiwoo's combat effectiveness. The interrogation transcripts from the Corvin raiders, their descriptions of her tactics. The salvage data from the blood price showing how thoroughly she had disabled a vessel designed for combat. But most importantly, he included her statement about humans hiding in plain sight. About how many might be scattered through the galaxy, their true capabilities concealed behind friendly smiles and civilian occupations. He marked it Priority 1 and sent it into the consortium's vast bureaucratic network, knowing it would take weeks to filter through the proper channels. By then, the truth about humanity would probably be spreading through other means. Stories traveled fast in space, and the tale of a single human engineer defeating an entire pirate fleet would make for compelling gossip. As he worked, Yalta found himself wondering about something Jiwoo had said, that humans deliberately concealed their strength to avoid making others uncomfortable. It was a form of consideration, really. A courtesy extended to those who might feel threatened by humanity's true capabilities. The question that troubled him was simple. What happened when humans stopped being polite? In the docking bay, Jiwoo helped load supplies onto the endless horizon while the crew worked around her with new respect. Hyun-soo approached carefully, as if worried she might suddenly transform into the warrior they had witnessed. "Jiwoo," he said quietly, "before, when I thought you were just an engineer, I was kind to you because I thought you needed protection." "I know," she said gently, "but you never needed protection. You were the most dangerous being on the ship." She looked up at him and her expression was sad. "Hyun-soo, I liked it better when you were kind to me because you thought I needed help. Being respected for violence feels hollow. I'd rather be liked for fixing engines and making decent coffee. Can't we do both?" he asked. "Respect your strength but also like you for who you are?" Jiwoo smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "I'd like that. Thank you." Across the docking bay, a figure watched the exchange. Lee Tae-yang was human, though few on the station knew it. He worked in waste management, a job considered so menial that no one paid attention to the small, unassuming man who moved through restricted areas with ease. His credentials claimed he was from a minor colony world, and his demeanor suggested someone content with a simple life. He recorded Jiwoo's face using his implanted memory system, then sent a coded message on a frequency that didn't officially exist. The message contained 2 words: "She's active." Within hours, that message reached 36 humans scattered throughout the sector. Most were in civilian occupations. A bartender on Nexus Station, a cargo handler on the mining colony Viridian 3, a chef on a luxury liner, a janitor in a corporate headquarters, a medical technician on a research vessel. None of them looked dangerous. All of them were. They didn't respond to the message. They didn't need to. They simply filed the information away, knowing that if Jiwoo had revealed herself, circumstances had demanded it. And they each made the same calculation: maintain cover unless necessary. Continue being helpful, friendly, and visible. The galaxy was full of predators. Humans had learned long ago that the safest way to move among predators was to look like something harmless, something beneath notice, until the moment you needed to remind them what humans actually were. On the endless horizon, Jiwoo finally made it to the refresher unit, stripping off the stained flight suit and standing under the sonic shower. The water alternative washed away blood and grime, but not the familiar weight of old instincts. She had enjoyed being just an engineer. 3 cycles of peaceful travel, fixing systems, learning about alien cultures, seeing wonders that most humans never dreamed of. She had hoped to leave the soldier behind on Earth. But peace, she reflected, was something you had to defend. And if defending it meant occasionally reminding the universe that humans were not prey, then so be it. She emerged clean, dressed in a fresh flight suit, and made her way to the mess hall. The crew looked up as she entered, their expressions uncertain. Morvek actually stood, offering her his seat in a gesture of respect. Jiwoo waved him back down and grabbed her usual corner spot. "Anyone want to play cards? I'm feeling lucky." There was a moment of hesitation, then Hyun-soo laughed and pulled out a deck. "I'll play, but I'm warning you, I'm very good." "I'm counting on it," Jiwoo said, shuffling with practiced ease. "It's no fun if I always win." As they played, the tension slowly dissolved. Stories were told. Laughter echoed through the mess. And slowly, carefully, the crew began to see Jiwoo not as a weapon or a threat, but as both the warrior who had saved them and the friend who had always been there. In the quiet of space, the endless horizon prepared to depart Meridian Gate. Repairs complete, cargo loaded, crew restored. Captain Vorath stood on the bridge, watching the human engineer laugh at something Tic-Tac had said. He thought about the ancient Quellan saying, "The most dangerous enemies are those who choose not to be," and he understood finally what humanity truly was, not a race of warriors pretending to be peaceful, but a race of peaceful beings who had never forgotten how to be warriors. The distinction mattered more than he could put into words. The endless horizon's engines hummed to life, and they departed into the vast darkness, carrying with them the truth that would slowly reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity. They were not weak. They had simply been waiting to see if weakness would be enough. 3 months after the incident at Valor Junction, the ripples had become waves. The story of Jiwoo and the Corvin Raiders spread through trade routes and communication networks like wildfire. Each retelling added embellishments, but the core truth remained. A single human had defeated an entire pirate fleet. The Consortium Intelligence Division received 1,700 reports of humans in civilian positions, suddenly displaying unexpected capabilities. Most were false alarms, nervous species seeing threats where none existed, but 43 cases were confirmed. Humans who had intervened in crimes, prevented disasters, or defended ships with skill, far beyond what their occupations suggested. On the pleasure world of Saphros, a human gardener named Park Min-ho had disarmed 5 armed robbers attempting to raid a luxury hotel. Security footage showed him moving with the same fluid precision as Ji-woo, neutralizing threats without killing anyone. When questioned, he had smiled apologetically and explained he had learned self-defense as a hobby on Earth. On the mining station Tyros 7, a human chef named Kim So-ra had prevented a terrorist attack by identifying explosive compounds in a shipment of food supplies. Her knowledge of chemistry was, she claimed, just part of being a good cook. The fact that she could identify military-grade explosives by scent alone suggested otherwise. The pattern was clear. Humans had been among the other species for years, quietly competent, friendly, and utterly unthreatening, until circumstances demanded otherwise. In the Grand Council chambers of the Consortium, representatives from 100 worlds gathered to discuss what was being called the human question. Ambassador Velric, a distinguished Drellian diplomat, addressed the assembly. "We must face an uncomfortable truth," he said, his forearms gesturing to the holographic displays showing incident reports. Humanity has been categorized as a Class 7 civilization. Minimal military capability, limited expansionist tendencies. Recommended threat assessment negligible. He paused. These assessments appear to be catastrophically incorrect. A shrill delegate clicked her mandibles. "You're suggesting humans have been deceiving us? Deliberately concealing their military capabilities?" "I'm suggesting that we deceived ourselves," Velric countered. "We saw what we expected to see. Small beings, physically unimpressive, with no natural weapons or armor. We assumed weakness. They never claimed to be weak. We simply never asked if they were strong." On the display, footage from the endless horizon played. Ji-woo moving through corridors, each movement economical and precise. The Corvin raiders, each one a veteran warrior, falling before her like training dummies. "The question," Velric continued, "is not whether humans are dangerous. Clearly some of them are extraordinarily so. The question is, what do we do with this information?" A Quellan military commander stood. "We establish protocols, monitoring systems. If humans are this capable, we need to track them. Ensure they don't pose a threat. And how do you track someone who has been specifically trained not to be tracked?" Velric asked. "How do you monitor a species that has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of concealment? Every human we identify reveals themselves only because they chose to act. For everyone we see, how many remain invisible?" The chamber fell into uneasy silence. The implications were staggering. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 80 years ago. In that time, thousands of humans had spread across settled space. They worked on stations, ships, colonies, and homeworlds. They were engineers, doctors, teachers, and traders, friendly, helpful, forgettable. How many were like Ji-woo? How many carried skills and training that made them more dangerous than entire security teams? And most troubling of all, why had they hidden it? Ambassador Kren, representing Earth in the consortium, stood to address the council. She was human, middle-aged, with gray hair and a warm smile that made her look like everyone's favorite aunt. She had held her position for 5 years, and most delegates considered her pleasant, but politically insignificant. "Honorable delegates," she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "I understand your concern. The revelation of human capabilities has been unsettling for many species. But I think you're asking the wrong questions." She activated her own display, showing not combat footage, but images of Earth, cities, oceans, mountains. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. We survived not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being adaptable, by learning, by working together, and yes, by being very, very good at violence when necessary. The images shifted to historical footage, human wars stretching back centuries, weapons of increasing sophistication, tactics that had been refined through generations of conflict. Every human you meet has ancestors who survived countless wars. We carry that legacy in our genes, our culture, our training, Most human children learn basic self-defense. Many serve in military forces. It's not because we love war. It's because we understand something fundamental. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. Peace is the choice not to use it. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of dozens of species. You asked why we concealed our capabilities. We didn't. We simply didn't advertise them. Would you feel comfortable if every human you met introduced themselves by listing their combat qualifications? Would you trust us more or less? A long silence followed. Finally, the shrill delegate spoke. You're saying you hid your strength to make us comfortable? We adapted our behavior to fit social norms, Kren corrected. Most species in the consortium display their power openly. Humans find that aggressive, threatening, so we do the opposite. We make ourselves appear harmless, friendly, approachable, not to deceive but to put others at ease. She smiled. It's called being polite. Polite, Valerie.